I'm into, so I'm going to record it here. So we're recording. All right, so I think we're good. Yeah, so Christina joined. All right, so we talked on 2 days ago, Monday, about rational and irrational. What does rational mean? Type it, you can say it, doesn't matter. What's the word rational mean? Not really necessarily related to math, but what's the word mean? What do we say?
Logic.
Yeah, like logical, it makes sense.
Reasonable.
Reasonable is a perfect word. We talked about having a conversation about football. Hopefully everybody was here. We talked about having a conversation about football, and if you had two logical, rational people having a conversation, then the conversation would be rational. It would be nice. It would be a nice, logical, rational conversation where you would explain what you thought and you would use facts to back it up, but you wouldn't get all emotional and you wouldn't get all fired up and get all angry, and everything would be nice and calm and relaxed, and again, what we would call rational. If we added another rational person, it would still be rational. Like, we could keep adding rational people. I think somebody's waiting again. Yeah, people, I'm not sure why you guys are getting kicked out, but if you're having internet issues, you really need to try to get that worked on, because that's going to hurt your ability to work in the class, because I can't go back and repeat stuff. So if you have a bunch of rational people, then the whole conversation is going to be rational, because you're all going to be calm and you're going to be using facts, and you're not going to get all emotional and start saying crazy stuff and getting everybody else fired up. A bunch of people that are rational keeps the conversation rational. Now, if you added one irrational person, that's all it would take. So it could be one rational person and then one irrational person, or it could be a whole bunch of rational people and then one irrational person. As soon as you add in that one rational person, we said the conversation, now it gets crazy, because they start saying a bunch of nonsense, and now you start arguing with them because they're saying a bunch of nonsense, and so you start kind of getting all fired up. So by adding even just one rational or irrational person, one person talking a bunch of nonsense, that changes the whole conversation to irrational, even though everybody else was rational. So then we related that to math. So this is all review. So we said, all right, well, here's some math questions we might see. What does sum mean? What kind of problem is that? Yeah, that means what the answer to an addition problem. Yep, the sum is the answer to an addition problem. So it's basically saying the sum, or the answer of a rational number and another rational number plus another rational number will be what? So I want you to type in real quick into the chat what your answer would be. We already did this, so you might remember, but just a little bit of review. So if you have a rational number and a rational number and you add them together, the sum is always going to be rational. It's always going to be irrational, or it depends. And you can type A, B, or C. Or you could write the words, type the words, whichever one. All right, so let's see what we're saying. We are getting a lot of A's. So everybody said A that typed in. That is correct. If all of the numbers are rational and we're adding them together, or in this case, we're just saying if you add one rational number to another rational number, just like we talked about in the conversation, it's going to stay rational. Two people having a rational conversation means the conversation is rational. Or two rational people having a conversation means it's a rational conversation. So just remember that. If you have all rational numbers and you add them together, then it's a rational answer. All right, so now type in your answer for this question. The product of a rational number. Product means what?
Multiplication.
Yes, so product means multiplying. So up here we were adding when we said sum. here. If you don't know that, you need to be taking notes, and because that you're going to see these words a lot in this section of the test. And I think there's quite a bit on the test about rational and irrational. And by test, I don't mean my test. I mean the first, basically your midterm. So product means we're multiplying a rational number times another rational number. So the answer will either be always rational, always irrational, or it depends. So type in what you think out of that. See what everybody's saying. So it looks like I'm getting a lot of A's again. I don't really know where it starts because everybody's saying A. All right, so everybody's kind of saying the same thing. That happens online a lot more than it happens in class. So that is correct. If you are multiplying rational times rational, then the answer will always be rational, no exceptions. So here's the quick version. If you haven't taken notes, write this down. Anytime you have all rational numbers, so there's no irrational numbers at all, whether it just be 2 rational numbers or whether it be 100 rational numbers, the answer is always going to be rational. You can't do any math to just rational numbers. You can't add, subtract, divide, multiply. You can't do anything and change the answer into an irrational answer. So all rational numbers means you're always, always, always going to have a rational answer. No exceptions. All right. So now let's go to this one. I want you guys to type in your answer. Again, we have sum. We said sum means addition. Move that up a little bit. So type in your answer now to this one. The sum of a rational number and an irrational number will, and then is it always rational, always irrational, or it depends? And I'll go over to it in a second. I'll give you guys a second to type in a few more answers. All right, let's see what we got. See if we get the same answer or people are willing to say something different here. So we get a few people saying different answers here. I got a lot of A's again. I am getting some B. Oh, I got a lot of B's there. Streak of B's there. So let's talk about the story that I gave about the conversation. When we had 2 rational people talking about football, we were having a rational conversation. And I don't remember who was irrational in this class, but the minute I brought in an irrational person, I think it might have been Christian. Christian, do you go by Chris, by the way? You can type it or say it. Okay, that's what I thought. I saw you type that somewhere. So, oh wait, no, you don't. You just go by Christian. Okay, so if we bring in an irrational person into our conversation and they start talking a bunch of nonsense, then that's going to automatically change the conversation to irrational. So if we add an irrational number to a rational number, it will always be irrational. So it was B for this one. That's with addition though. So sum means addition. So with addition, it will always be irrational. So we've covered these 3 scenarios. Well, really it's kind of 2 scenarios. I broke product up and sum up into 2 separate things, but just with all rational numbers, it doesn't matter what the math is, it's always going to be rational. So now we need to talk about 2 more scenarios. I think I'll do a new page already done. Yeah. So we haven't talked about these scenarios here. I'm going to write on the board. I'm going to make this a little bit zoomed in though. And we'll go to 150. I think. So we haven't talked about this. So this would be the product of a rational and an irrational number. Because I'm going to multiply those together now. We talked about the sum, we talked about adding them. Now we've got to talk about multiplying, or the product. So I'll write that down. multiply, which is also the same thing as the product. So there is a trick on this one. Almost all of the time. So technically the answer is it depends. But there's only one exception for when we can get this. So almost all of the time, so I'll put almost always, this is irrational. But there is one exception. So there's one exception when I can get when I can say, well, a rational number times an irrational number is going to give me a rational number. There's only one time when you can get this for multiplication. And actually, there's only one exception for division as well, and it's the same exception pretty much. Anybody? I'll give some sort of extra credit if anybody knows what it is, but you only have like 30 seconds. Just say it out loud if you know what it is. Unmute and say it. How could I take a rational number, multiply it by an irrational number, like pi, for example, would be irrational. So if I replace that with pi times some rational number, then that will give me a rational number. Anybody know what it is?
Didn't you change it into a fraction?
Well, a fraction here times an irrational number is still going to be irrational. That would still fall into this almost always irrational. So it's not a fraction. I mean, you could make this number into a fraction, I guess, but that's not the answer. It's got to be more specific than that, really. Anybody else? So we need to somehow, basically, we kind of have to cancel out this irrational number so that all we're left with is a rational number. Well, the only way to cancel this out when we multiply, because if we multiply this number by any number in the world, except for this one exception, it's still going to be there in some form. We might change it a little bit. It'll like have other numbers involved, but we're not getting rid of it. We need to actually get rid of it, like totally get rid of it. The only way to totally get rid of something, make it go away, is this. 0. Because 0 times pi would be what? 0 times anything would be what?
0.
Yeah, it's 0, right? Well, 0 is a rational number. I don't know if we specifically talked a lot about 0, but 0 is a rational number. We could write that as a fraction. You could actually write it as a bunch of fractions because 0 over any number is still 0. So you could write it as a fraction. So 0 is a rational number. So that's rational, that's irrational, and then we still got a rational number as the answer. That's the only exception. Every other time it's going to be irrational when you multiply them. So this is the only time when it won't be irrational. That's when you use 0. So with that in mind, division is the same exception. So if you say, well, what about if I take a rational number and I divide it by irrational? What is my end result going to be there? Well, it's going to always, again, I'm going to say almost always be irrational, just like multiplying, except when you use 0. So if we plug in 0 for the rational number, so if we take 0 and we'll use pi again for irrational. Well, 0 over divided by pi is 0, so we get a rational number. Any other number that we put, well, actually, that's not true. Oh, yeah, any other rational number, I'm sorry. Any other rational number that we put as the numerator, the top part of that fraction, will always give you an irrational number. So here, I'm going to kind of wrap up this section for you, and then we'll move on to the last thing for the rational, irrational. So, when we talked about only rational numbers, it was always rational. No matter what math you did, addition, subtraction, division, doesn't matter. When we talk about irrational and rational, so this scenario here, it could be this scenario here where we multiply the, could be, well, it is addition and subtraction. They have the same rules. In addition and subtraction, if we were adding here, that's always irrational. There's no way to change that into a rational number. So it's pretty safe to say it's going to be irrational if you have one rational and one irrational. The only exceptions to that are in multiplication and division, and the exception for both of those is if the rational number is 0. So I'll give you an example. I don't have this one written down, but I'll give you an example of what they'll, I guess I could type it real quick. Yeah, I wasn't going to, but I could. So here's kind of what the question might look like. They like saying the product, again, that means multiplying, of any, and here's the tricky part, non-zero rational number and an irrational number is, and then they do those same options, and you're going to answer this in a second. If you know what your answer is, you can go ahead and start doing it. Always rational, always irrational, or C, it depends. So you guys can answer that in the chat box real quick. I'll give you 30 seconds or so. So those of you that are not participating in this stuff when I'm asking questions, I hope you're still tuning in, because at some point I'm going to start calling on people individually, and that's going to be your grade. And it won't be so much that you have to necessarily get it right. It's just I don't want you tuning out and not paying attention while you're at home on these online classes and thinking that you're still getting full credit for just being on your phone doing Snapchat or whatever you're doing. And I know kids are doing that. I mean, pretty obvious. Some of you are not turning in the bell work already. So when I start calling, if you don't answer me and give me an answer pretty quickly, I'm not going to wait forever for you to get an answer. Then you're going to lose points on your classwork as well. So you need to be tuned in, just like my kids face-to-face have to be tuned in for the entire class. You guys have to do the same thing. All right, so I'll check answers. So what do we get? So I got some B's, B, 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 a lot of B's. How do I scroll? There we go. Everybody's saying B. Holy cow. All right. That is correct. If it's a non-zero rational number, that means any number except for 0, then it's always going to be irrational. Because the only exception that would make it rational is 0, but they told us it's a non-zero rational number. All right. So the last one we need to cover, we've done rational and irrational. We've done all rational. We now need to do irrational and irrational. So we have a question. I think maybe somebody just responded in the chat. So here's our last scenario. We haven't covered this. I'm going to do this one pretty quickly. So when it comes to having two irrational numbers, this one is definitely a it depends. There still aren't a lot of exceptions. Like normally this is going to be irrational. Like if I add most irrational numbers together, it's going to be irrational. If I multiply most irrational numbers, it's going to be irrational. If I divide, subtract, same thing. Most of the time it's going to be irrational, but there are more exceptions to this. Can anybody come up with an exception? And I'll let you pick any math you want. Division, subtraction, multiplication, whatever. Can anybody come up with an exception, kind of for extra credit points? When you could take an irrational number and either add it, subtract it, divide it, multiply it by another irrational number, two irrational numbers, and come out with a rational answer. Can anybody come up with an example? And I'm just curious to see if anybody can, because it's a little tricky. Once you see it, you'll be like, oh yeah, that's so easy. But we don't always think of this easy stuff right away when we're doing this. Nobody? Nobody wants to take a shot? You can send it in the chat box if you'd rather do that. I don't care. Can't hurt to guess. Nobody wants to take a shot? All right. No extra points for anybody. So I'm going to give you a few examples of how it works. I'm going to give you the easy examples. There are actually some that are much harder examples than this, but so with an irrational number, I could take the same irrational number, and that will a lot of times give me, actually pretty much all the time, that will give me an exception and it'll be a rational answer. So for example, I'm going to use pi again. Hopefully you're all, actually no, I'm not. I'll use this. So square root of 3 is irrational. Well, I want to do some kind of math and come out with a rational number. That's my goal. Well, there's actually several things I can do math-wise to get a rational number with an irrational number. I could just say, okay, well, I'm just going to subtract the same thing. What's the square root of 3? Subtract the square root of 3.
Zero.
Yeah, it's 0. Any number subtract itself, it doesn't matter what kind of a number it is, it's always going to be 0. So in this case, that would equal 0, which would be a rational number. So there you go. There's an exception. So technically, there's an infinite number of exceptions, because we could put any number we wanted in for an irrational number, and then subtract that same number. And there's an infinite number of irrational numbers, so technically there's an infinite number of exceptions, but they all follow that same pattern for subtraction. But what it turns out is anytime I take the same number, actually here I'll do a different one. So let's take another irrational. This time I guess we could do pi, and let's divide it by the same number. Well, that comes out to be what? What's pi divided by pi? It's not pi. What's 2 divided by 2?
0.
Not 0. 2 subtract 2 would be 0, but not
No, 1.
1, right? So 2 divided by 2 is 1. What's 3 divided by 3?
1.
What's 4 divided by 4?
1.
What's a million divided by a million?
1.
So what's pi divided by pi?
1.
So that's 1. Real quick, too, I want to throw this out there, and I'll talk more about this throughout class. The reason I love math is because even if you don't know how to do something, sometimes if you just take other numbers and do the same thing, it will give you the answer that you need. Like, for example, we didn't know exactly what pi divided by pi was because pi is this weird number, but the principle is the same. Any number divided by itself is going to have the same answer. So if we think about 2 divided by 2, that's 1, and we know that. Okay, well, if 2 divided by 2 is 1 and 3 divided by 3 is 1, then pi divided by pi must also be 1, because pi is just a number. It happens to be an irrational number, and it would go on forever, but it's still just a number. Just like 1/3 is a number, 0.33333, that goes on forever. The only difference is pi doesn't have a pattern and 0.3333 does have a pattern. So try to use other examples when you get stuck on problems, especially multiple choice tests, and the rules are normally going to be the same. So if you can figure out something you do know, come up with an example you do know how to do, then just apply that to what you are trying to figure out. A lot of times that works. So if I had this right here, I'm going to give you another example of rational and becoming, or I'm sorry, irrational and irrational becoming rational. I have the square root of 17 and I multiply it times the square root of 17. That just gives me 17. It's kind of the definition of a square root. If you multiply those two things together, then you just get the same number without the square root sign. So irrational times irrational gave me rational. So if you notice the pattern, it's always the same irrational number that leads you to get a rational number. So again, I don't know how they might ask a question about the irrational numbers. There's a lot more they could do with that, but in general, it's always going to be irrational unless it's, you know, kind of the exception where you're using the same irrational number in the problem. All right. So we'll do a quick break, very quick, 5 minutes. Please be back on time. So you have until, on my clock, you have 10:07 is what I'm going to go by. Maybe a little bit more. Actually, I'll turn my timer on so you have exactly 5 minutes. I have a timer here in my classroom. All right, so 5 minutes. Make sure you're back. If you have any questions, I'm still here at my computer if you want to ask any questions. I do have some information on sports. If anybody was interested in sports, boy, I've got a lot of people that keep getting kicked off. You guys need to get your internets checked or something. Spectrum should come out. I'm assuming most of you are on Spectrum. They'll come out and look at your internet and figure out why you keep getting booted off. If you are, you might need to get what's called a hard line. So instead of using a wireless connection, like where you don't have any cords into your computer, you might want to have a hard line installed, and then you should be able to plug that, although some of the computers don't have the attachment you need in the actual laptop itself, but you can get a separate attachment. Actually, the computer should have come with the separate attachment. And then if you're hardwired, you should never lose connection. You shouldn't keep getting booted out of meetings. Because if you miss something, like I said, I can't get you caught back up. You can go back and watch the videos, I guess, but then you got to go back and watch the videos just to see what you missed, which probably could get annoying. We got 3.5 minutes. I don't see any questions, so I'm leaving that screen. I'm going to show you how you're going to do some. I'm going to try to show you. I can't show you exactly because I see something different than you see, but I will do as much as I can to show you how you're going to submit some of your assignments. You're going to do it straight in focus, not through Canvas. About 2.5 minutes. Oh, real quick. Well, I'll wait until everybody's back. Got about a minute, a little less than a minute. All right, everybody should be back. 5 minutes is up. What are we supposed to be doing? I was at the bathroom. If you guys leave, you got to tell me you're leaving, first of all. We just had a little break, though, DeAndre. If you're walking away from the computer, you got to tell me that. Because, like I said, in the future, I'm going to ask a question and I'm going to specifically call on somebody that says, is showing as being online. If you don't answer me, I'm assuming you're not actually attending the class, right? And that's not just to you, DeAndre, that's to everybody. And that'll be worth a grade. Like if you don't answer me, I'll give you it won't take long. You either you're there or you're not. I'll give you 10 or 15 seconds, and if I haven't heard anything from you, you get a 0 for that question, which is part of your classwork grade every day. So that'll start probably next week. I don't think I'll do that Friday because we're still having some technical problems, but that's why I say you have to get your internet fixed, which means maybe getting that hard wire. It's called a hard wire. So if you talk to Spectrum, if you guys don't know how to get that done, some of you already have that set up probably. You don't use wireless, but if you're using your phones and you're getting booted off, that's a whole nother story. You should all have laptops though, because freshmen get laptops. And if you don't have them yet, then let me know if you don't have your laptop yet and you're waiting on it. Okay, so I want to show you how you're going to submit stuff. And again, hopefully everybody's back because I heard a noise. Was that before I go on? Yeah. Yeah, a bunch of people are getting kicked off. So make sure you get your internet checked. Get a hard. I would get a hard wire or a hard line, or basically it's a cord that comes from your wall and will plug into your laptop. And you will probably need an attachment for your laptop, but they can get you one of those through the district or through the school. I'll show you real quick. I'm going to turn my camera on and I'll show you what the attachment looks like. So here I'm turning my camera on. I don't know if you guys have even seen me before. So that's Mr. Gill. So this is what the attachment looks like. You can see that. It's like this end right here goes into the USB port of your computer. You might already have this in your computer, especially if you have your own computer. So this, can we see? Yeah, there you go. So this, like, you probably don't remember the old time phones, but it looks like a phone input, but it's really for, I don't even have any in my room where I'd show you what, normally it's a yellow wire, or I'm sorry, a big yellow cord or a blue cord that comes out of the wall. For some reason they use those two colors. But if you plug this into your computer, then you can plug the wire coming out of the wall into this, and that will allow you to, I believe you would never have any trouble losing your connection, and because a lot of you are losing connection, and if you miss something, if I call on you when you lose your connection, it's going to hurt your grade. So you got to have internet that works. All right, I'm going to turn that back off. So in focus, I've already put an assignment in there for you. So if you'll notice, classwork, it says classwork 1. Oh, your classwork, by the way, is worth 40% of your grade. Your assessments is only going to be worth 60%. Really, for you guys, your assessments is going to be kind of worth even more than that in a way, because I can't do the same classwork stuff with you guys that I do with the in-person people. So your assessments are going to really even be worth more, just to let you know. So if you're taking shortcuts and using your phone and Google and all that kind of stuff at home, that might be great. You might do okay on this part. But then when it comes to the tests and the quizzes, which are worth more, you're not going to do well on that. So you need to be trying to figure this stuff out, not trying to take shortcuts to it. Because the quizzes and tests will be set up to where it's a lot harder to take shortcuts. First of all, you won't have that much time. But second of all, there will be questions on there where you can't just Google it. I've already done this last semester, so I know they can't Google some of the questions that I have. So, all right. So in this classwork, I have an assignment. Mine will look different than yours, so I don't know exactly how yours is going to look. I'm assuming, though, you will have something, like you'll click on my name for my class, and then you should see your assignments. I think it might look a little different, but you'll see the assignments in there. I've put the worksheet in the assignment, so you should see, how do I show this to you? Let me try this. I think this, I don't have any grades in there, so I don't mind showing it right now, but once I have grades in there, I can't show somebody's stuff. So if I click on one individual, I think this is more like what you guys will see. Like you'll see all the assignments listed going down, and then all of this stuff listed across. So if you'll notice right here, it says assignment files, and it's a link. You can click on that. That will open up the worksheet for you. I don't want to work from that one because that's in somebody's grades, so I don't want to touch that. But again, if you click on my class, I think you see a list of your assignments like this. If you look in assignment files, it will show you any attachment. You then have the ability to upload a file. So you see this on the far right. So when you get your paper done, just like you're taking a picture and sending it to me in Canvas, you're going to take a picture of it. And you can do this through your phone. My kids did it through their phone last semester. By kids, I mean my students, not my personal kid. So if you do all of your work on a piece of paper, like you work it all out on the worksheet, or if you're not able to print stuff out, you can just write the problem down and then solve it out on paper. So then you would take a picture of it with your phone, go into focus using your phone. Again, click on my name. You'll see all of the assignments listed. And then for the particular assignment that you just did, make sure you're matching it up. So make sure you're matching the correct assignment up with your correct picture. Click on upload, and then it gives you the ability to just go find that picture and upload it directly into Focus. I'm going to do that for a lot of the classwork stuff instead of Canvas, because all Canvas does is shoot me an email, and that's not very helpful for me. So I'm going to do a lot of the stuff through Focus, which today you'll submit it through Focus as well. We'll take a little time at the end of class and you'll do it that way. So anyway, so let's go ahead and I'll show you what you're doing today. You may want to go ahead and pull this up now. So if you want to click on the file and go ahead and download the file to your phone or your computer. The first one I'm going to write for you, so you don't need it to take notes, but then when you start working, you're going to have to download it anyway. So if you want to go ahead and do that, you might as well do it. I think I already, maybe I didn't start it. Or maybe I erased it. I might have already erased it. Yeah, I did. So I'll rewrite the problem. So the first problem on the worksheet, if you haven't downloaded it yet, that's fine. Just write what I write. But you will have to download it in order to work on the worksheet. So the first problem is we're solving equations. So that's what we're doing, solving equations. Solving for a variable, I should say, in an equation. So that's the first problem. Number one. Now, the first thing we need to understand is that and I'm a fantastic artist, so I'm going to show you guys again how fantastic my artistry is. First thing you need to understand is that an equation is like a seesaw. Hopefully you guys remember what a seesaw is from back when you were in elementary school, or before maybe. A seesaw is that fun little, I don't know if it's not really a game, I guess, but it's the fun little, it's not a toy, it's like a playground thing. So you put a whole bunch of people on one side, fantastic artist, like I said. And a whole bunch of people on the other side. And you can go up and down, go left and right, or not up and down, not left and right. You can go up and down, or what we used to try to do is we used to try to balance it and get it flat. So if we got it flat, we knew that however much these people weighed, it was the same that these people weighed. They were equal. Both sides were equal. Now, if somebody else came and played, and we added another guy, and he was a little guy, if we wanted to keep it equal still, then we had to add another little guy over here. Had to be the same exact weight. That's the only way we could keep that in balance. So, taking that to equations, equations are the same way. Equations are in balance. They're equal. What the value of the left side is equal to the value of the right side. I'll give you another example. How many quarters are in a dollar?
4.
4, right? So if I have 4 quarters, so these are quarters, I'm going to draw in the president. Oh boy, it's hard to draw with, I can't do that because quarters are too small. Actually, I'll draw bigger quarters. So 4 quarters.
It's a big quarter.
I know, I have to, in order to draw the president, I have to draw big. And you know they have poofy hair. That's president. They're all presidents. Does anybody know who's on a quarter?
A president.
Which president?
One of them.
Which one?
I forgot.
I think it's George Washington. Could be wrong, but he's on a dollar bill, I know. I think he's also on the quarter. Is this not true right here? Speaking of a dollar bill. And George Washington again. Is 4 quarters equal to a dollar?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, right? It totally is. What happens if I did this? I added another dollar over here. Are those sides still equal?
No.
No.
No, they're not, right?
It is
They're
George
out of
Washington.
balance. My equation is not equal anymore. So what I would need to do is I would need to add to this left side, I would need to add the exact same thing over here. Add a dollar over here. I could have added 4 quarters, but I'm going to do a dollar bill because you're really adding the exact same thing to both sides. So that is a huge key concept you have got to remember for equation.
George Washington's on a quarter and a dollar bill.
Yeah, I thought he was on a quarter also. Whatever you do on one side of an equation, and the sides are determined by where the equal sign is, not the middle of the equation, it's wherever the equal sign is. Whatever you do on one side, you have to do it to the other side. So write that in your notes if you don't know that, because you've got to remember that piece of it. Boy, somebody probably got kicked out again and came back in, so we'll check that. So, with that in mind, we have an equation that we're going to solve. I got to do this fast so you guys can get a couple problems done. Oh, maybe nobody did try to come in. Oh, yeah. Oh, boy. That's going to be an issue. So I'm going to solve this 2 ways, and I'm going to do it quickly so you guys can at least get a few problems done without having to do it all as homework. So, I can do this one of 2 ways. We don't like dealing with fractions sometimes, so we kind of get rid of the fraction. We try to get rid of the fraction. The way we do that is we multiply by the denominator, if you remember that term. The denominator is whatever's on the bottom of the fraction. So if I want to change this equation and just make it an equation with no fraction in it, no denominator, I could multiply this. So that dot means multiply. I could multiply by 10. Technically, I'm multiplying by 10 over 1, but I'm really also just multiplying by 10. Well, like I just said, if I do it on one side of the equation, I have to do it on the other side of the equation. So I have to multiply this by 10 also. And then there's even one more step sometimes, and we have it in this one. I actually have to multiply everything by 10, even this, term that's not on the right side, it's still on the left side, but I'm basically multiplying the entire left side of the equation by 10. So technically what I'm doing, and we haven't done distributive property, we'll get into that. So technically what I'm doing is this. I'm multiplying the entire left side by 10, which is the same thing as saying 10 times the r over 10 right here, and then 10 times the 4. Well, I should have done distributive property before I did this, because I know for a fact not everybody remembers it, even though we should remember it. So I'm going to rewrite all of this in a second, so if that was confusing you, trust me, we're going to spend a lot of time on distributive property and equations, so you'll see it over and over and over again. So again, back to number 1, r over 10 plus 4 equals 5. We're multiplying the entire left side by 10. And then we're also multiplying this side by 10, which is just one number. So that technically means we're saying 10 over 1 times r over 10 plus, and you should be writing all of this down, 10 times 4. We don't really need to put that over 1 because we just had a 4 there, not a fraction. And then equals, and we can go ahead and solve that if we want 50. So now when I do the rest of the math, 10 cancels out with that 10. They really are just, you're really just saying 10 divided by 10 is what you're basically saying. So they go to 1, so we don't need that anymore. And we're just left with the r. And when we solve an equation, that's our goal. We're trying to get r all by itself, the variable. Can anybody tell me what a variable is? What is a variable? You guys freak out when you see variables, and they're not that big a deal. Anybody? I'm going to come back to it in a second when I finish this. But nobody? So this becomes r plus 40 equals 50. You could probably solve it. You know what r equals already just by looking at the numbers. But the mathematical way you solve it is we need to get rid of the 40 because we want to get r all by itself. And then we subtract the 40 over there. So that gives me, so that goes away because 40 subtract 40 is 0. And that was our whole goal, was to get rid of the 40. I still have the r, so I just bring it down. It didn't go away, and we don't want it to go away because we're trying to solve for it. You never touch the variable, really. I mean, there are some exceptions to that, but really when you're solving for a variable, you'll never do anything. You won't actually do any math with that variable. You just kind of want it to be left over after you do all the other stuff. I'll check that in a second. So r equaled 10 was the final answer. So copy all of that down. I'm going to check real quick. Somebody either is trying to get in or they sent me a message. Oh, somebody's saying the answer. Good. Again, don't take shortcuts. Don't Google this stuff. I know you can find ways to do this stuff on your own. That is not going to help you. Yeah, it's in focus under the assignment. So Isabella was asking, where do you get it? And I'll show that again in a second when you guys start working on it. Right now, you can just copy everything I do if you haven't downloaded it yet. So that's one way you could have solved this. There's actually another way you could have solved this, and I'm going to show you that as well. So hopefully everybody has that copied. If not, remember, I'm recording this. I think it's still recording. So you can go back and watch this. Yeah, it's still recording. So that's why I'm going to keep going fast, because you can always go back and rewatch it. So now let's do the second way you could solve it. And some of you will like this way better. Some of you will like the first way better. Doesn't matter to me which way you do it, as long as you show your work. Again, just remember, you need to learn this process. Don't just Google trying to find the answer, because there are ways that they will solve it for you. But ultimately, your tests are going to count a lot more than your classwork. So if you're getting a good classwork grade, but you're bombing the tests, you're still not going to do well in class. All right, so same problem, plus 4 equals 5. So instead of getting rid of the fraction, I could just leave the fraction there if I wanted to. So instead of working with the number 10, I could get rid of this 4 first. And that's what I'm going to do in this example. So in order to get rid of the 4 first, I subtract it because I need to do the opposite. You're always doing the opposite math operation to get rid of a number. So the reason we multiplied by 10 is because we were saying r divided by 10 right here. That's r divided by 10. That line means divide. So if it's r divided by 10, then we need to do the opposite, which was multiply by 10. That's the way we solved it before. Now we're doing it a different way, though. Let me erase that. Now we're going to get rid of the 4, which means we do need to do the opposite with the 4, which the opposite of adding 4 was subtracting 4. So that's what I just did. But remember, in an equation, the left side equals the right side. If we add something to one side of the equation, we got to add it to the other side. If we subtract something from on one side, we got to subtract it from the other side. So in this case, we also have to subtract 4 over there. That whole concept, like I said, it's crucial. I can guarantee you, some of you, if not all of you, at some point are going to either forget to do something to both sides, or sometimes I see people do the same thing to the same side. You can't do that either, because then you're still out of balance. Basically, you've just made it even more out of balance because you did the same thing twice on the same side. So over here we get 1. That all goes away, which is what we wanted. So we're just left with r over 10. R divided by 10 is what that means technically. Well, if I'm saying r divided by 10 and I want to get rid of the 10, I need to do the opposite. So again, the opposite is to multiply by 10. Technically 10 over 1, you could say, but I'm just going to say times 10. Well, then I need to multiply by 10 on the other side also, because I got to always do the same thing on both sides. That 10 divided by that 10 goes to 1. 10 divided by 10 is 1, because technically this was 10 over 1, remember? Now I'm just left with r again, and over here I have 10. So I got the same answer. You should always, always, always get the same answer, no matter which way you do it. So if you want to kind of test yourself out, do it both ways, you should get the same answer. The last piece of this is, okay, so I'm going to erase this. So we think r is equal to 10. We don't know that yet. We might have made a math mistake, or we might have done something wrong in the process, but we think it's 10. There's only one way to know if it's 10. I'll take that question in a minute. I'm not going to ask because we need to get through this. In order to know for sure if I got this correct, I need to take this answer, because I'm saying r equals 10. Oh, man. I'm saying r equals 10, or I think r equals 10. Well, if r equals 10, I should be able to plug this number back in to the equation and replace r, because if r equals 10, I can get rid of the variable and put the number there, because all a variable is a missing number. I told you I was going to come back to that. We're just using the variable r because we don't know what the number is yet. We need to solve for it. Well, now we think we do know what the number is. We think it's 10, so I can take the r out and I can put the 10 in place of it, and if I solve it out, the left side should equal the right side. So I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to test and see if I got it right, if the r is truly equal to 10. So if r is 10, then I replace r with 10. I still have the rest of the problem the same. So there was a 10 on the bottom, on the denominator, and then it was plus 4, and then it should equal 5 if I did it correctly. Well, 10 divided by 10 is 1, and 1 plus 4 does equal 5, so yes, that worked. This side equals this side, so that looks like I got it right. So let me go back. So you guys can start working on the worksheet. You have 2 examples to work from. I'll look at the questions. All right, so Christian, what is your, when you're on the home screen of Focus, click on where it says your grade. Yeah, I appreciate you guys helping each other because I don't see what you see. So only another student can really tell you exactly what you need to do. So thank you so much for doing that. Joseph, I think, was helping Isabella and really probably other people. So when you do these problems, you need to show all of that work that I just showed. You don't have to do it two different ways, but whichever way you do it, you need to show all of those steps, even a super simple step. Like if you had r plus 40 equals 50, you don't just write r equals 10. You need to write subtract 40 on both sides and then write r equals 10. Because at some point, you're not going to be able to just know what the answer is. You're going to have to do the math because you're going to be dealing with decimals and fractions and numbers that aren't nice round numbers.
Can I do the expression on paper then send it to you on Canvas?
You can do any problems you want. All right. I expect you to get done with, I'll tell you which ones I expect you to have done by the time you turn it in. I do want you to do some and turn in what you finish in the next 10 minutes to me. Where's my sheet? Hold on just a second. I'm going to tell you which ones I think you should be able to do, and then you can do these. So number 1 is exactly like number 2. So you should be able to do number 2. I'd like you to try to do number 3 and 4, but if you don't get to those, that's fine because they're not exactly like the example. I would also like you to do number 15 and 16. And these are all before we get out. You got 12 minutes. And the way that you'll submit it is you take a picture of it. You're going to go to Focus, to this assignment in Focus, and you're going to upload your picture. So number 15 and 16 are pretty much exactly like the one we just did. On number 16, if it helps you, I'm going to write this on the board, so you may want to watch what I write on the board. So everybody look at number 16. So the problem says 9 plus n divided by 4 equals 15. Well, that's not the exact way that number 1 looks, but because we're adding here, you can actually change the order of those terms. You can actually say, well, that's the same thing as n divided by 4 plus 9, and now it does look just like number 1. So again, I expect you to have 1, 2, 15 and 16 done. After that, you can do 3 and 4. We didn't do 3 and 4 like an example, but I mean, I think you should know how to do those based on doing the other ones. And then we're going to get into the, actually number 14 you can do as well. You can change the order on number 14. So this was number 16. Number 14, you could change the order on number 14, and this would actually be the problem. So on number 14, if you're going to get rid of that, remember you have to do the opposite. So if you want to get rid of that 5, that's technically subtracting 5. So to get rid of it, you have to add 5. So just remember, you have to do the opposite. You don't always subtract as your first step. Sometimes you're going to add if it's a subtraction problem in the original problem. So like on number 10, for example, you say 4n subtract 9. Why wouldn't subtract 9 again on the left-hand side? Because that doesn't get rid of the subtract 9. I would actually say plus 9. And then I would say plus 9 on the right-hand side also. So remember, you have this video to watch. If you want to work on this worksheet, we're going to do this worksheet again in 2 days. So if you think you can do some of the other ones, you are more than welcome to do other ones and submit that. You can always submit more than once, by the way. So when you submit something to me in like 10 minutes, you could then submit again later tonight if you did more work. And I do give extra credit when people do additional work. So that's up to you if you want to do extra problems or just do the ones that I mentioned. You got about 9 minutes to do the work, and then you'll have, you can get it submitted to me during the break that you have. The next break is only 5 minutes though, so remember that when you're going to your next class. I'll look and check questions now.
On Word, I can't like
If you have questions, you can just ask me verbally too.
on Word I can't do
They're
that.
on focus, Seth. Were you late?
What problem supposed to do?
Again, you guys have to pay attention. I can't go back and continually repeat myself, so I'll deal with the questions as I get them. So Seth, you said did you find the problem, Seth? You guys have to be in front of that mic at all times. I'm in front of the speakers at all times.
So we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 15, 16, and 14.
Yeah, not necessarily in that order. I'd like you to do 1, 2, 14, 15, 16, then come back and do 3 and 4. Because 3 and 4 are different. You don't have any. I mean, if you know how to do them, then you can do them. But I didn't do an example like those. Not exactly like those. Did you find them, Seth? They're in focus. I think I might be able to hear you now, Christian, but I haven't heard you yet.
I'm talking, can you hear me?
I can. Did everybody find the worksheet? Somebody's saying they can't find the worksheet.
Yeah.
All right. They should be in there, Seth, as long as you're, yeah, I mean, you're listed in this class. You go to, what's your question, Christian?
On Word, the like draw setting thing, I can't get to that. I don't know if my Word needs to update or something, but I can't get to
It might, why are you using Word though?
to write down like the questions and the math questions and stuff. And then I was going to
I
send
would
it to
just
you
do it
through
on paper
Canvas.
and take a picture of it personally. That's a lot faster than trying to, Word, if you ever have to make changes and like erase stuff, it's not, I'd just do a paper and pencil and then take a picture of it and upload it in Focus. I mean, if you have to do it the other way, that's fine, but I can't help you with why Word is not showing you the draw option. So
Okay.
just do it on paper and pencil, and you may have to call tech support to the county tech support to try to get that working. Or maybe sometimes if you restart, it downloads downloads updates, and then that might fix it.
Okay.
So this is your focus. If you go into my name, you should see a list of all of your assignments, which is just one right now. And then you should have a column that says assignment files. That's where they are. I mean, now you're running pretty late, but again, I'm not going to penalize anybody for getting it to me late today. I'll probably give some extra points for those of you that do get it to me on time. But you need to still turn this in today. Again, number 1, number 2, number 14, number 15, number 16, and then you can come back and try number 3 and number 4. And we'll do the other problems as well, but you don't have to worry about doing them for today. All right, so let me see what other questions we have. Can't find the problem. So Seth, if you still can't find them, let me know. Yeah, two-step equations is the name of the worksheet. I'm sorry. It's the only file in there, yeah. You will get some negative answers. You will get some fractions, I think, as well, although I
Mr.
don't
Gill?
know for sure if you get fractions. No, I don't think you get any fractions on this one. Just some positive answers, some negative answers, but there won't be any fractions. All right, good. That was to you, Seth.
Mr. Gill?
Next question, yep.
I just got a meeting thing for my next period class. I don't know if it's too early for that, but
It just means they started it super early because they probably had a break. They probably didn't have a class right now. So
I got one too.
yeah, if you have a teacher that doesn't have a class for their 5th period, like they have a planning period, they might start the meeting early. So that doesn't mean you have to be there right now. It just means they've started it early.
oh, what time does this class end?
9 or 10:45. So you got about 4 minutes in this class. Like I said, if you can submit a few of the problems, then I'll give you an extra point or two. if you can go ahead and submit it on your break. I know it's only a 5-minute break. If you don't, that's fine. Just submit them when you're done, and that's like the standard that I'm going to grade it on, is just getting them submitted by the end of the day today. So whenever I do this, I'll normally give you more time. We had to cover the focus thing, which I don't have to do with the in-person people, so that took a little time. But now that we've covered that, in the future, you'll have more time to do the problems in class, and then you should be able to submit them to me at the end of class. So remember, this is recorded. I'm going to actually stop the recording now. I think we're done with questions. The meeting will still continue, but this